Welcome to Expand Your Fempire with Caterina Rando, the podcast for women in business on a mission, sharing ideas to support you to grow, lead, and thrive. Now, here's your host, Caterina Rando.
Welcome back to another episode of the Expand Your Fempire podcast. I am so excited today because I have a super smart guest, Hailey Rowe, who is going to bring us some massive value today. Hailey Rowe helps coaches build profitable and sustainable businesses. Hi, Hailey. So happy to have you here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Hailey, I always like to ask everybody, how did you get from great gal growing up to amazing entrepreneur? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I started back in 2010 and I got a bunch of different certifications, knew I wanted to have a business. I loved business and I loved wellness, but I didn't know how I wanted everything to come together. And I loved personal development. So I got my bachelor's in entrepreneurship, and then I started to work for some startups in the wellness and personal development space for a couple of years, because naturally I had that thought we all have, I'm not experienced enough, I'm not ready, so I need to get some jobs to learn the ropes of entrepreneurship and have experience at a startup. And so I did that for a little while, and it was like a crash course in learning all the things that have to do with marketing and business development. And eventually one of the companies that I worked with and for had a lot of delays, overhired, overbought their equipment and things like that. And everybody got let go one day on a Zoom call. And I was using that as my sign to actually start my own coaching business, which I had always wanted to do. And I had put on the back burner during that job because I was working way too much. And I realized my regret was putting that on hold and thinking it was safer to have a day job. And so I ended up taking that opportunity to build my business, working with coaches in the personal development, wellness, and life coaching space, and started the Health Coach Nation podcast, which you were an amazing guest on, and a community and coaching programs and all that stuff. And that's where I got to today.
Well, thank you. And I love what you shared about, you thought that the job was the safe route. I think too many people think that way because it's not like it was 50 years ago, 40 years ago that people had jobs for 30 years. I think they say now that 10 different careers is standard operating procedure for a lot of people over the course of our work life. Well, I love that you dived in. I love that you're supporting coaches to build their businesses. And, you and I were chatting a little bit ahead of time. There's lots of different things that interfere with coaches being successful. And what are some of the things, Hailey, that you feel somebody is a good coach, but what's in the way of them having a thriving business?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, aside from just the logical things of you need to have an amazing standout offer, you need to know how to market yourself and get clients. I think a lot of it comes down to, though, them thinking, oh, I need to be perfect before I start. And they're overthinking everything. And so they never get anything done. Or they get that procrastination and shiny object syndrome because they're like, okay, there's so many things I could be doing. I want to do all of it. And so then they don't really do any of them well. They just kind of are all over the place and scattered. So I think a lot of it comes down to the process of getting clients, creating an offer, deciding on what you're going to speak to on social media. That's not hard. What gets hard is all the mindset drama and overthinking and perfectionism that stops you or slows you down in doing some of those things.
Yeah, it all comes down to mindset, doesn't it? If you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to be able to thrive long-term. Okay, let's upgrade everybody's mindset. Hailey, what are some of your super tips to make sure that we're maintaining a good mindset when we're in business?
Yeah. So one of the things I like to start with is the tip to give yourself better questions. So a lot of times we're asking ourselves things like, what's wrong with me? Why is this so hard? No one's paying attention to me. Why even bother? Instead of questions like, what can I do today to expose myself to new people in my niche? what can I do today to build my belief in myself? What can I be thinking to think like my 10K plus per month person would be thinking? So better questions that lead you towards more positive, compelling action steps and answers is the first thing you have to do if you want to shift your mindset, because our brains naturally like to go towards everything that's wrong. And we have to deliberately train it to focus on more positive answers. I don't want to say you want to just immediately shift to positivity if you don't believe it. But when we start to bridge ourselves there, meaning instead of thinking, oh, why am I amazing? And feeling like you don't fully believe your answers, just start with like, why am I capable of doing this? Well, I know so-and-so did it and they are no different than me. I know blah, blah, blah. Like just start to bridge yourself towards that and you will be able to train your brain to think differently. So that's the first tip. And I think another tip when it comes to changing your mindset is to decide consciously that you're going to bring value or get value out of everything. So I think a lot of times coaches think like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if I'm going to be successful or make it. And my thing is like, just decide that you're going to hit a certain goal and keep working towards it until you do. It might not happen on the timeline you thought. It might not happen the way you thought, but you get to decide. And that's the coolest thing, like that you can do something and you can achieve a certain outcome. So that whole process is about who you become on the journey to get there. And the goal is just the cherry on top and the bonus.
That's great. I like to say a goal is a decision that has been made. And a lot of times, as you're saying, people roll around with all their ideas, but they don't make a decision. And the most important decision is a decision that, hey, I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be determined. I know there's going to be setbacks. I'm going to bounce back from setback. And as you're saying, all of this is really coaching yourself to keep your party moving. And I love what you said about the questions we ask ourselves, because if we ask ourselves, why am I a loser? You can have a lifetime supply of answers. But if you ask yourself, why am I a winner? You might not come up with as many answers, but the questions definitely inform our thinking. And I love what you said, Hailey, train your brain, because we do know that people who make a decision to have a positive disposition, that they will have a more positive disposition. You know, one of the things my girlfriends have known for many, many years is we say no negative self-talk, right? To catch yourself, catch your girlfriends, to not be down on yourself, because we have to be our own best success coach. I love that, Hailey. Okay, we're going to make a decision. We're going to ask ourselves the right questions. Give me one more on mindset. One more thing that we're going to help everybody upgrade their mindset.
Yeah, I think the last thing would be decide how long you're going to give yourself for a certain task and plan for the objections and the obstacles that your brain's going to come up with. In other words, if you have on your calendar today, do that email or post or reach out to this person for a speaking gig or whatever, you could probably plan in your morning. You know, when that comes on your calendar and it's time batched, your brain's not going to want to do it. It's going to tell you it's too scary. Like you kind of can foresee what obstacles and or thoughts are going to come up for you. So my suggestion is, rather than pretending that that's not going to happen and just being like, oh, buckle down tomorrow extra because I didn't do it today, and so it'll be fine, I'll just do it tomorrow. I want you to actually write down the possible obstacles and or thoughts that might come up, and come up with as Dan Sullivan says, he takes you through this exercise, come up with a strategy or a mindset shift for each one. That way you can go in a little more prepared and already being like, oh, I know I was going to feel an uncomfortable emotion during this task. Of course, bring it on. I prepared myself for this. So you can't prepare yourself, of course, for everything, but that is a way to prepare yourself a little bit more. And the other thing is decide how long it's going to take you. People love to say, well, I don't know how long it's going to take me, because when I write the email, it might take me 4 hours. But my suggestion is decide how long it's going to take you, do it, and then find out. And if it took you longer or you need to work on it more, you have to start setting kind of like a deadline for yourself. And sometimes good is better than perfect. And you need to become okay with accepting maybe not 10 out of 10 work sometimes. Maybe sometimes in the beginning when you're just starting out, it might be 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 work. But that's the only way you can keep refining and getting better is if you set that deadline, do it, and then keep refining and keep getting clear on how long things actually take you.
Well, yeah, because the more you do stuff, the faster you're going to get at it too. The more we do things, the more productive we get. And I love what you're saying about give yourself a time, because things will take about as much time as we'll allow them. If you give yourself a day to write that email, it will take a day. If you give yourself an hour, it will take an hour or longer, but it won't necessarily take you all day, because if you block out the day, you can definitely fill the day. Of course, some of that day will be procrastination. Sometimes people say to me, my first book, they say, how long did it take you to write it? I said 3 months of writing and procrastinating. Because, you know, if you give yourself the time, the task will take all the time. Hailey, love this. Mindset is so important. Now, you know, I want to ask you a question, because one of the things I feel keeps me in a good mindset is hanging out with other like-minded, like-hearted women on a mission, just like myself, having community. Is that something that you find that you teach? What are some of the things that you would say, like activities that we've talked about, the thinking and things we're doing on our own, but what else to help keep us in a good mindset?
Yeah, I agree with you. I have a free community called Health Coach Nation, and then also my Zero to Hero Coach Inner Circle, which is a community of like-minded coaches who are driven and they help each other, and we mastermind sometimes. And you realize, oh, wow, there's other people going through the same exact thing. So I think it's really important to surround yourself in an environment that's supportive. Do you need that, quote unquote, to be successful? I would say no. I mean, I think you can be successful no matter what, but is it way nicer and propels you forward faster if you are around those kinds of people? Yes. So that's really key. And I also think for me, what helps me is constantly nurturing my mind with listening to my mentors in podcasts and books and things like this. And the other thing I would say is have your own way to track your wins and your results. So what I mean by that is I think a lot of times if you're not acknowledging your wins, we kind of forget, or if things aren't going as fast as we think they should go, like we tend to get discouraged. So I think it's really important to have some kind of practice where you're tracking your wins and losses, because I actually think both of those are results that you can actually learn from and continue to grow from and should be proud of, compared to doing nothing and not having any wins or losses and just playing it safe and having literally nothing to look at. I think it is good to track your wins, and I've started to do that, and just results in general I track, so that I can keep reminding myself like, dang girl, because if you're not consciously doing that, it's really easy to be like overwhelmed and get caught up in the day-to-day stuff.
Well, yeah, because I think that a lot of times what happens is that people are looking for those Insta results. For example, somebody might make 20 reach outs to invite people to come to a workshop or invite people to a sales conversation, and they might get no response at the end of the day. And they might think, oh, well, nothing worked. Well, it's actually not that nothing worked, it's nothing Insta worked.
Yeah.
Give it a day, give it 2 days. Sometimes people come back 2 weeks later, ready to go. That would be a result, even if it's not an Insta win. I love that. Track your wins and your losses. I would say, my friend, I wouldn't track my losses, but you know, everybody's different. So I do like to stay on the positive. I guess one thing I would say is, like, when I've lost a sale, like somebody's come back and said, whatever reason, they're not going to move forward, I always try to jump back and get another sale right away, rather than go be depressed. So I say, okay, what can I do to turn this around with another sale?
That's kind of what I mean, is kind of seeing it as data. Like I got 5 yeses and 3 nos, and I would track that, because then I could be like, oh, wow, those 3 nos, I wonder what happened. I wonder what I can learn. And then I turn it into a positive, because then I'm like, oh, okay, 3 nos, I can learn from that. So I like how you just jump right back into another sales opportunity.
Yeah, well, I also like what you're doing with the data, because I do agree with you. Data is very important. Now that's telling you, hey, if I make, 8 calls, I'm likely to get 5 yeses. So if I make 80 calls, I'm likely to get 50 yeses. Sometimes people say, oh, I want to make $10,000 this month. And I'll say, okay, well, how many people are you going to talk to? Because if your class is $1,000, that means you need 10 people. So how many people is it going to take? And some people don't know. I encourage people to times it by 4. 10 times 4 is 40 conversations, but then you got to talk to 160 people to get 40 conversations. That sounds like so many, but that's over the course of a month. But somebody might be doing way better, like you're saying, but maybe not. So data is essential for people knowing the truth about their business and their numbers.
Yeah. And you don't have to make the data mean something negative about you. I think a lot of people are afraid to track their data too, because they're like, well, if I have it and I see I got 6 no's, I'm a failure and a loser and I should give up. But I'm like, no, we just need that information, right?
Right. Because the other thing is, when you have that information for this month, then you can look at how can I do better for next month. And it's back to what we talked about at the top of our time. It's really the questions you ask yourself. Okay, if I'm getting 5 yeses and 3 no's, what can I do to get 6 yeses and 2 no's? How can I continue to improve? Because one of the guiding principles I encourage everyone to embrace is always be upgrading. That's another way of saying, look at what I'm not doing right or what I could do better. But I like to say, always be upgrading. What is a guiding principle, Hailey, by which you run your business that you teach your clients?
A guiding principle for me is my FAST framework, and it stands for followers, action, sales, time management, and transformation. And the reason why it's a guiding factor is because it helps me know what to focus on in my business to be generating clients and making my impact. So if any decision I'm trying to make doesn't fall under one of these categories, and I'll quickly explain what each of them mean, that's when I'm like, oh, maybe that's not the best use of my time. Maybe I don't want to do that right now, et cetera. So the followers, what I mean by that is anything that has to do with your process of taking a cold new lead, getting them in the door and them finding you online, to them being a client and or booking a discovery call with you. That would be a followers activity that you should focus on and part of your lead generation process. And then the action part is, how do you create content that's compelling enough that people want to take action and reach out to you? So making sure that your copywriting and your messaging is clear, anything having to do with that is a good thing to focus on. Sales, obviously that means what you're selling, making sure you're clear and confident on it, making sure it's priced appropriately, and feeling confident on your discovery calls and or whatever you do to sell your program. And time management is where you're spending your time. So making sure that you have a plan for the day, you time block, you don't procrastinate, things like that. And then transformation is 2 things. The personal transformation required to get to your goals. So continuing to coach yourself and fuel your mindset and overcome imposter syndrome and things like that. And then the transformation for your clients, which is how are you going to help your clients get from point A to point B and be really helping your clients and getting those good case studies and testimonials, things like that. So that's kind of something that I teach and take my clients through to help them grow their business.
Thank you. Thank you, Hailey. I like that. That's really great. Now, I know that you have a couple of free resources for everybody that we want to let them know about. Of course, we'll put the links in the show notes, but let's go ahead and tell them a little bit about what you've got, because I love free stuff.
Yeah, me too. So the first thing is, if you are trying to simplify your content creation, going back to how we talked about creating content that's compelling and makes people want to reach out to you, I put together a content roadmap that can help you streamline 30 days of content, compelling content, not just content for the sake of content. So if you want to check that out, that's at haileyrowe.kartra.com/page/content, which I know isn't the best link, but you're going to put it in the show notes, so it'll be there for everybody. Or you can just DM me on Instagram at Hailey_Rowe and just say, I want the content roadmap, and we can send you the easy link. And then I'm at haileyrowe.com and the Health Coach Nation podcast and Facebook group. Those would be the free resources and pages I would check out.
Wonderful. Hailey, we've talked about lots of different things. What piece of information or advice do you want to make sure to share with our listeners before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I think the main thing would be whatever it is that you're fearing in your business right now, it's just because you're afraid of feeling the feeling that will be associated with it. And chances are, if you're waiting to do something that you know in your heart you want to do, you're probably already feeling that feeling anyways. So to me, you might as well take action towards your dreams, even though it's scary, even though it comes with discomfort, because you're already accustomed to feeling those feelings by not having your dreams, by continuing to stay safe and wonder what could be possible if I tried. That would be my suggestion, is just get really good at supporting yourself in the process of taking action and being open to feeling the uncomfortable feelings. And why not do it with a dream that you're building that has an upside on the other side of it?
Love it. I'm all about taking action. I'm all about being willing to be uncomfortable. And yeah, the thing is, if you have an idea that keeps pestering at you, keeps nagging you, keeps nudging you, hey, what about me? What about me? That is definitely something that you want to embrace. Hailey, thank you so much for being with us today on the Expand Your Fempire podcast. Thank you for all your great insights and resources. And everybody, do what we've discussed here. Be your own best coach. Focus on your mindset to make decisions for the success of your business. And most importantly, take action. Thank you, Hailey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody, we'll be with you next time. And remember, you've got massive value to bring. There's a lifetime supply of people to serve. Go be loud and proud. Get in front of people so you can sell more, serve more, and most importantly, uplift more lives. Bing, bing, bing.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Expand Your Fempire with Caterina Rando.